Welcome to the Maryland Injury Law Advisor video series. I'm your host, Maryland Accident and Injury Lawyer Phil Santamaria. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about car accidents in Maryland and answer the question, how do you know if you have a good case? In the course of doing that, I'll give you 3 or 4 tips that will help you either to prove your case or to maximize it. Okay, let's get into this. There are basically only 2 things that you have to be able to prove to have a good car accident case in Maryland. Lawyers, insurance adjusters, judges, and the like refer to these things by the shorthand description liability and damages. Liability means whose fault caused the accident. Maryland has a fault system in this kind of a case. You have to be able to prove that some other driver, or perhaps more than one other driver, did something that caused your accident. The correct name for a claim of this kind is negligence, and negligence means carelessness. So you have to be able to prove that some other driver or other drivers carelessly did something to cause your accidents. For example, perhaps they were driving too fast, not paying attention, talking on a cell phone, texting, or some other thing like that. If you can prove that, you probably have a good Maryland liability claim. But you have to be aware that Maryland has a potential defense against your claim. Maryland is one of only 4 states in the entire country that recognizes this defense called contributory negligence. If it is found that you contributed to causing your accident, then your claim is completely defeated. This compares to systems in other states called comparative negligence. Different states have different versions of it, but basically the way that works is this way. If it is determined that you are, say, 10% responsible for causing your accident, then you lose 10% of what you would otherwise be entitled to recover if you had not contributed to causing the accident. But in Maryland, if you're 10% responsible or 5% or even less than that, your claim is completely defeated. So that leads to the first tip I want to give you. Since you have to be able to prove liability, since you don't have a Maryland car accident claim if you can't prove liability, it is very important that you start to collect and save the evidence of what happened as soon as possible. Now, if you've had a significant car accident, police will be investigating and writing a report, and that's helpful. But even though that's the case, I strongly encourage you to, as soon as you can, start getting down all of the facts of what happened. Write them out, dictate them, record them, register them in some fashion, and in your notes, answer the questions who, what, where, when, why, how, who was involved, what happened, where did it happen, when did it happen, why did it happen, etc. Get that all down, all of the details you can think of, and hold on to those notes because they're going to be invaluable later. Videos and photos are incredibly good evidence. So get them, make them, do them as soon as you possibly can. If you're injured and in the hospital or otherwise just not feeling up to getting out and having these things done, have someone else do them for you. Of course, if you hire a car accident lawyer or law firm, your lawyer will be doing this kind of investigation for you, as well as, frankly, much more than just that. So that is the liability part of this. What about this damages aspect that I talked about? That's the second thing you have to be able to prove. You have to be able to prove liability. You have to be able to prove damages. Damages basically have 2 types. One is property damage. That's damage to your property, basically to your vehicle. And the other are personal injury. Some insurance companies call them bodily injury. But whatever you call them, this is your claim for compensation for having to suffer with injuries that you didn't ask for and didn't deserve, frankly, but were caused by somebody else's carelessness. First, let's talk about these property damage claims. In essence, the at-fault driver is required to give you back what you had until just before he or she caused your accident. Functioning vehicle. So mainly and most commonly that means repair your vehicle. And while that's being done, they owe you something that you've lost, and that is transportation, a rental vehicle. If it would cost more to repair your vehicle than the vehicle is worth, then that's considered a total loss, and what you're entitled to in that situation is the fair market value of your vehicle a moment before the careless driver destroyed it. Now, there's one other potential claim. This is another tip I want to give you. There's a potential claim called a reduction in value or diminished value claim concerning your property that's been damaged. If you have extensive vehicle damage that's repaired, if you have a newer vehicle, a year or two old, if you particularly have a high-end or more expensive vehicle, you may have a diminished value claim. And the concept there is that with these kinds of vehicles, even after they are repaired, they're not worth as much as other similar vehicles. I mean, after all, if you or I went into a used car lot, would we buy this vehicle and pay just as much for it as for this one when we know that this vehicle has had extensive damage repaired? I wouldn't. And I'll bet you wouldn't either. So you may have a diminished value claim. Be aware of those and look into them if the circumstances are right. Well, that's property damage. What about your injury claim? Theoretical perfect justice would be to uninjure you, so you wouldn't have to go through all that you've had to go through, but of course that's not possible. All that we've ever been able to figure out to do to compensate people who have suffered these kinds of injuries is to compensate them in money damages. This is compensation for physical pain, mental anguish, sleepless nights, inconvenience, just having to deal with all that it is that you've had to deal with. Many people refer to this type of damage as pain and suffering, and it certainly includes that, but as you're learning, it's more than that too. Well, those are the damages that you're entitled to recover. That leads me to another tip, and that's this. What I've been talking about are fault claims against the other driver. And I've explained to you that Maryland has a fault car accident insurance system. However, there's an exception. You, in all likelihood, have a kind of insurance that is normally called within the industry PIP, P-I-P, rhymes with SIP, rhymes with tip. And that is a coverage which will pay your medical bills and your lost income up to a policy limit, which is at least $2,500 and could be as much as $10,000, depending upon the level of coverage that you selected when you bought your insurance policy. Be sure to file a PIP claim. And in fact, if you're starting to get a feel for the flow of these claims, you know that, yes, you're going to be able to recover these items against the other driver when you make your fault claim, but that could be months or a year or years down the road, depending upon how your claim shakes out. So in the meantime, having PIP to pay these things in the short run can be invaluable. I've got another tip for you. I'm often asked, do I need a lawyer for my Maryland car accident claim? And my answer may surprise you. I believe that the overwhelming majority of car accident claims can be handled by you without a lawyer and without paying legal fees if you want to. And to show that I sincerely believe that to be the case, I've created a website, MarylandInjuryLawAdvisor.com, that has extensive information and is probably sufficient for you to be able to handle routine car accident claims yourself without a lawyer's help. I've also written a book for people who want to settle their own injury claims without a lawyer's assistance. It's called The Car Accident Claims Kit, and those 5 words, thecaraccidentclaimskit.com, is where you can learn more about that. However, that's not what today's video is about. So there are many cases, and in fact I've just said probably a majority, definitely in my opinion, a majority of cases that you don't need a lawyer's assistance for. But here's the point. Do not be foolish. If you have large financial losses, if there will be long-term consequences of this accident, if you have serious injuries, concussions and other brain injuries, spinal injuries, herniated discs, internal injuries, broken bones, some combination of these kinds of injuries, in my opinion, you would be foolish to not have a lawyer to assist you. Why? The people that will be defending against your claim are professionals. They do this all day, every day. And when your case gets to court, if it does, they hire or they have on their staff highly capable lawyers. So you want someone on your side who is as professional and is as capable and cares as much about your interests as your adversaries do about protecting the interests that they have. A related question is, when should you hire a car accident lawyer? My opinion is that you should hire a car accident lawyer as soon as you decide that that's what you want to do. Whether you hire a lawyer on day 1 or day 301 after your car accident, the legal fee is the same. So why wouldn't you want to have a lawyer working for you in the early stages, nailing down the evidence of liability, talking to witnesses, getting statements, developing the evidence of your damages so you will be able to recover all of the damages to which you are entitled, advising you, counseling you, supporting you, being in your corner? Why wouldn't you want to have these advantages over the entire course of the process? Well, that's a summary of car accidents in Maryland and an answer to the question, how do you know if you have a good car accident claim? I hope that you've enjoyed this information. If you think that it's valuable, please give this video a thumbs up. If you have questions or comments, put them in the comment section below. If you would like to talk to me, you can call me anytime to discuss either the subject of this video or any other questions about Maryland accident and injury law. Thanks for watching.